This is the limitless Keith Lee.
This is Brody King.
This is Angel Garza.
Will Ospreay.
Hornswoggle.
Pentagon Jr.
The villain, Marty Skell.
The Mexican Ray Phoenix.
King Ricochet.
Concrete Rose, Sunny Kiss.
And I'm here to ask you to stop what you're doing, take just one moment, and bask in the glory of the Busted Wide Open.
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 Boston Wide Open.
Busted Wide Open podcast.
You're listening to the Busted Wide Open podcast, dropping the elbow on the hottest topics in sports entertainment and the world of professional wrestling. With your hosts, Nick Howell and Sir Ian Dangerous. Coming to you from the Orbital Jigsaw Network Arena in sunny Southern California.
Supplies! Welcome, patrons, to your August 2020 bonus episode right here, BWO Live, coming to you from Twitch. We're changing things up a little bit, but we'll explain all of that in just a minute. My name is Nick Howell.
Did you just quote UHF? Wow, that's going back. Weird Al Yankovic's only movie. I am Sir Ian Dangerous, and welcome, patrons, to your bonus episode for August 2020. And here we are, Nick. Here we are with this nice bonus episode to do. I'm very excited about it because it's the same thing we did last month, but there's a little twist. There's a twist. Right. But we'll get into that, Nick. I know you have some things to say, and then we'll talk about this show that we are about to do for our lovely, wonderful, amazing patrons. So get on with it.
Yes, you guys know where to find all of the stuff. This is for all of you patrons. We had a bit of a conundrum because we don't have the facilities to do a private or unlisted stream on Twitch like we did on YouTube. So had a quick conversation with some of you in Discord, and basically what we want to do is live stream this. Kind of be okay with if we have some people roam in that aren't $10 patrons, but the VOD immediately comes down and gets uploaded along with the audio-only version over on Patreon for you guys as well. So I hope you guys are okay with that. Please let me know. We're trying this. We did just make the move in August, so this is the August episode. Rather than try and deal with the unlisting mechanics of YouTube again and potentially have something break, we wanted to try this here. That way it would just keep everything streamlined. So please let us know in chat if you guys have any big objections to this. We want to make sure that the sanctity of the Patreon is absolutely intact. So please let us know what you guys think about this. Other than that, you guys know where to find all the stuff. Hell, you're $10 patrons. Thank you guys very, very much for all of your patronage over the years at this point. It has been absolutely amazing. It's the best way to support the show, and it has grown and grown and grown. And now with the annual subscriptions, you guys are just showing, holy smokes, you are committed, and we love you guys for it. So thank you. Thank you very much for constantly being fans and kicking things off. I mean, Abe already throwing 1,000 bits in. It says, take it. I got a bonus episode I didn't even ask for. Take the money. I'm so happy. Well, Abe, technically this is your August bonus episode.
You didn't ask for it, but you deserve it.
So, yes, indeed. Also, Jess O'Connor threw in 200 more bits. Said, have fun, y'all. She couldn't stick around, but thank you very much, Jess, for that. Ian, I have done my homework.
Oh, did you?
But I am kind of following your lead here. So why don't you set this up for everybody, what we're going to be doing tonight, and
sure, absolutely. So last time on the Busted Wide Open Patrons bonus episode, we did a little something called the 10 best technical wrestlers and the 10 best spot monkeys. And I felt that kind of compared and contrasted. You have the people that are very much about mat-based wrestling and the people that are very much about flips and flying and entertaining the audience. So kind of two different takes on how to wrestle. We're going to do something similar this time. We are going to, in the same format as that one, draft. We're going to have a competitive draft of who we think are yours and my top 5 best brawlers and top 5 best comedy wrestlers. So we're a total of 10 each. So 10 brawlers, 10 comedy wrestlers. And if you're sitting out there going, what the hell does brawling and comedy wrestling have to do with each other? There is actually a connection that I want to discuss. And so we're gonna draft, and then we're gonna discuss that connection between brawling and comedy wrestling, and actually kind of get into the idea of brawling in wrestling and the idea of comedy in wrestling. So it's going to get a little bit deep at the end of this. I hope, or we could just be kind of blathering on, and it could be not as deep. But either way, I hope it's going to be entertaining. I hope it will be entertaining, and yeah. So we're going to discuss brawlers, comedy wrestlers, and just what that means in professional wrestling in general, Nick. That's what we're doing today. But of course, starting off, we've got to actually draft our wrestlers. We've got to look at all of the best brawlers and best comedy wrestlers in history and figure out who the best ones ever were, the ones who really defined brawling in wrestling and the ones who really defined comedy in wrestling. So I've got this down here as starting off with the brawlers. And Nick, when I say brawling in wrestling,
yeah,
like
tell me what your
brawler,
definition of that and the comedy ones are. I think it's worth having our own sort of stake in the ground as to what we consider that to be.
So I've got mine written down here, and it's basically just a bunch of like kind of ideas of what I expect from a brawler. Like when you think of a brawling wrestler, you think of someone who isn't really technical. They're brutal. They're in there. They're just hard hitting. They're aggressive. They're mean. They're using stiff kicks and punches. They're using lariats, headbutts, elbows. Sometimes they're using foreign objects. There's a lot of going outside of the ring, but they're not flashy. They're not showy. It's just a very kind of brutal style of wrestling. And the idea is that they just like the brawler should be someone that comes across as being a mean person or a bad guy, like the sort of person you wouldn't want to have a bar fight with because they've probably been in a ton of bar fights.
Right.
So you're getting kind of an idea. There's a lot of wrestlers that have that to their persona. And there's a lot of wrestlers that have a bit of brawler in them. But I'm talking about pure brawlers, guys who went out there and that was what they did. They went out there and, went out in the crowd with the fight and like tossing chairs around and scaring the crowd. Guys who just would, every hit looked like it hurt.
Yeah.
Right. And, I'm not talking like strikers. Strikers are very tactical. They're hitting you when it's going to hurt the most and where it's going to hurt the most. These guys they're throwing haymakers. They're just out there just swinging. Right.
Yep.
And they're not necessarily like a power wrestler. A power wrestler, like a guy who's really buff or a guy he's going to toss you around. They'll use big throws. They'll use their own weight. That's why we're not calling this big guys. Like the brawler could be a big guy. Big guys have been brawlers and they tend to a lot of times. But big guys tend to have their own style as well.
And not all brawlers are big guys, but all big guys can be brawlers.
Can be, but big guys have a style all their own. You can ask Big Show or Undertaker. They actually have gone down to the PC and trained some of the bigger guys down there on how to act like a big guy, how to sell yourself, how to move, how to take moments like a big guy. That's a very different than what a brawler is doing psychologically in terms of what they're portraying in the ring. Chaos is part of the style as a brawler, right? They're just out there to cause mayhem. The matches are usually car crashes. They're not going to be jumping around and flying around. They don't leave the ground very often. So that's my idea of a brawler. When you think of a brawler, Nick, what do you think?
Street Fighter. Kind of not the game, but like a bar fight. You gave a bar fight example. That's exactly what I think of.
USA.
Absolute brawlers. They're gonna use
Japan.
Weapons if they need to. They're going to. It's mostly punches and clotheslines, lariats, all the things that you were describing there. I agree with everything you said there.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's. I don't want to say that this is kind of stretching a bit, maybe, but I want to say it's partially like a state of mind. It's a state of mind. It's a state of mind that you want to get the audience into. You want to freak out the audience. You want to scare the audience. Part of the style is not having a style. It's being chaotic. It's terrifying the audience with the chaos, right? That's got to be part of when you're watching what you're watching, you're a little bit freaked out. And you could argue that like deathmatch wrestling falls into this, but deathmatch wrestling, I would argue, is an evolution of brawling that has gone somewhere completely different.
Yeah.
There are certainly deathmatch wrestlers who I would argue are among the top brawlers of all time. And in fact, one of the guys I have on my list is more known for death matches, but I think he's one of the greatest brawlers ever. Actually, I had a couple guys that are deathmatch guys, but they are fantastic brawlers as their foundation for what they do in deathmatch. So, yeah. But let's, I think that's a pretty good intro to brawlers. Let's stop now and let's actually go and let's pick some, Nick. Let us pick our top 5 brawlers each, the top 10 brawlers of all time. We're going to do this draft style. So if you didn't listen to last month's bonus episode, how this is going to work is we're going to alternate our picks, and we can poach. If someone else picks one of the ones we had on our list, we got to figure something else out. We got to. It gets a little bit tense in here, Nick.
Ian, I think you should probably go first on this one. I'll go first on comedy. How's that sound to you?
It sounds horrible, actually, because I have way more brawlers than I have comedy guys.
I can ask Google. We can do a coin flip.
Yeah, let's do that. We did the coin flip last time. Let's do a coin flip over there. Ask Google. Be nice. I'll take heads.
Calling it already. Coin flip. All right, we're going.
Yes.
And it is tails.
Dang.
Damn
All
it.
right, so
See, I was going to let you go. Okay, fine.
Wait a minute. I won. I lost.
You lost.
So I should be going first.
Okay, go first. All right, fine.
I don't want to go first, and I lost.
Fair
therefore
enough. I want to
go
go first on comedy.
Okay, so you won.
Because I want to steal the F out of that one.
I hate when you win. All right, so I'll go first.
Yeah.
So
that's
my number.
Right. I won the coin flip. I defer to you. There you go.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
I love how you don't know how coin flips work. It's great. So all right. So my number 5. This is tough because I'm trying to play this against what I know you're going to do here.
Okay.
So I'm going to start. My number 5 is going to be the guy I was talking about, the deathmatch wrestler who is actually probably one of the most phenomenal brawlers of the last 20 years, and that's Necro Butcher. If you've ever seen some of his classic matches where it's not strictly a death match, but just it's supposed to be a wrestling match, he'll do the whole thing outside the ring. His match versus Samoa Joe is a classic example where Joe can brawl, but Joe has got so many different techniques that he can do. He can go to so many different styles of wrestling. Necro's a straight brawler, or he's going to be a deathmatch guy. That's his two specialties. But my God, he's a good brawler. Great at freaking out the audience, great at getting in their faces, great at doing all kinds of chaos. So I'm going to pick my number 5, Necro Butcher.
It's almost harder to pick the 4th and 5th one than it is the top 3 for me.
Yeah, Sam. Which is why I'm so mad you made me go first. Damn you, Google.
These two are a toss-up for me, and they're going to be my 4 and 5, but I consider them of on par. Number 5, Vader.
Vader. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll allow it. He definitely falls into the big man group, power guy group.
And that's why I had trouble with that one when you were outlining, we save the big boys, but I think there's enough big boys that are bigger than I like Vader as a pick here for a brawler. Because anybody that got in the ring with him was scared of him, not really because of his size, but because of he was going to hurt you.
He's scary. He's going to hurt you.
That's obvious.
And he's going to
hurt you.
Power you. And there's actually another guy that's going to be on this list at some point that had a classic match with Vader that was one of the great brawls in New Japan history. But we'll get to that. He will be on this list. I'll make sure he is.
Okay.
So this is tough because, again, I don't want to get down to the bottom and get squeezed out some of the guys I want to be on this list. But I can't not have this guy in here. Dick the Bruiser from back in the AWA days.
Okay.
You want to talk about a guy that just, you see him, you hear him speak, and then you just see him get into the ring, and he's freaking terrifying. I mean, I could even pick him as a tag team with Crusher, his quote-unquote cousin. But he and Vern Gagne made a lot of money together.
Yeah.
Because Dick looked like a dude that, like, when you saw him, you were just like, that's a bad man.
Yeah.
That's a bad man. Missing teeth. He had that voice always sounded like this because he had an esophageal injury from football. Like he was a bad dude. And I debated putting Dick Murdoch in here, but I don't put clan members on my list. So bye-bye, Dick.
Fair.
I'm doing Dick the Bruiser. He is my number 4.
I did not have that one on my list. It was controversial. Yeah. My number 4 is going. This one might actually be controversial as well, depending on perspective. Number 4 is Sheamus.
You know what? He's on my list. He's not one of the guys I wanted to put in my top 5, but I absolutely agree. You talk about a guy who goes in there and bruises you. I think he does a few. He's one of those guys that's almost a crossover, but I'll allow it just because, he's one of, I think, the last modern day brawlers. Like, he doesn't do a lot of the real chaos stuff I was talking about where he goes out in the crowd and scares the audience, but he'll beat you up.
Yeah.
And his style is he's like one of the stiffest guys in WWE, right? He's going to go out there. He's going to beat you up. He's going to make the audience believe that other person's getting beat up.
Yeah.
So, I disagree with him being top 5, but as far as like an absolutely all-time brawler,
yeah,
I cannot
it was a flip
argue
for
with
me between him and Vader, and it's again, I consider those two like equal levels of.
I would have done Shanae before I did Vader, but that's just me.
Fair enough.
Come on now. Got to give some love to the Mastodon here. But all right, so number 3. We're on to the number 3 now. This is where it's going to start getting hairy.
Yep.
Because if you don't say some of these people that I have on my list, I'm going to be real mad at you. Because I've got 4 or 5 more here that need to be on this top level.
I've
got
at least 3 more that need to be on this, in my opinion.
Oh, geez. I'm scared. All right, I'm going to... my number 3... Number 3 is going to have to be... I got to make sure that it gets on here, and I don't know if you're going to do it. Yeah. I've got to put on Terry Funk.
He was on mine.
Post 50 years old, specifically, because he was not a brawler in the early part of his career. He was a straight up, tough guy from the South.
Yep.
But he became a damn brawler. He really became a brawler in his later career. So I've got to have Terry Funk on here.
He was
one of the
definitely
best
in the list, the 3 that I mentioned a moment ago. He was one of mine as well. I agree. Some of his matches, I mean, you go back to Backlund or
Flair.
Some of those matches were just, I mean,
Rhodes, you could also argue, could be a brawler as well sometimes. So
it just made me hurt, watching him fight, Oh, yeah. He was definitely on those 3 that I
mostly
mentioned.
his matches with another guy who I hope is on this list somewhere, Nick. But we'll see, because I'm getting nervous, Nick. Number 3 for you, sir. What do you have?
Stan Hansen.
Oh, thank God. Okay, I would have put him higher on my list, but at least he's on there somewhere.
Yeah, that's gonna be the fun part of the conversation in a minute.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see who gets that numero uno spot here.
We even said it on BWO Daily the other day when it was his birthday. We would never want to take a haymaker from Stan Hansen.
No.
And
it knocked out Vader's eye. We just
might
said
have
Vader
one
was a
of
great
the
brawler.
strongest right crosses in the game. Just absolutely would just hit you stiff. My God, I can't imagine what it was like to take a not worked punch from Stan Hansen. Just massive boulders for fists, and he had to be on here for sure. I agree.
I would have had him higher, but you know what? I don't care as long as he got on here.
They're the top 5.
He's absolutely in there.
Yeah.
Guy, but there's I'm down to number 2 here, and thank God you said Stan Hansen, because he was my number 2. So my number 2 instead, because I got to make sure he's on here, Cactus Jack.
Oh.
Mick Foley. He was actually, get this, he was Wrestling Observer News, Dave Meltzer's Brawler of the Year from 1991 until the year 2000. Unbroken for 9 years. Wow. He was his Brawler of the Year. And that's, by the way, keep in mind, some of those was when he was working as Dude Love or Mankind.
I appreciate that you specified Cactus Jack.
I led with Cactus Jack because that was the brawler persona.
Yeah.
And then you had Mankind, which was more of like technical wrestler meets brawler, and then Dude Love was just comedy, right? Which we'll get back to. But the bottom line is he was one of the best dudes at creating chaos, going outside of the ring, freaking people out. And when you put him and Terry Funk together, look at the times he was in WWE. The best examples you get is him and Chainsaw Charlie just brawling around, being crazy, beating the crap out of each other. That was just their style. That's what they did. So I've got to have Mick on there, specifically as Cactus Jack.
Quality. All right, we're down to the final 2.
Oh, what is your number 2, sir? I'm nervous. I'm nervous what you're going to say here, because we've kind of knocked out a lot of the big ones. No.
Stone Cold! Stone Cold! Stone Cold! It's Stone Cold, by God!
You know what's funny about that is you're not wrong, except the fact that I would say 80% of his career or 90% of his career, he wasn't a brawler. He
I understand
only
that.
became a brawler because of his injuries.
I understand that. I agree with that. But what the Stone Cold that we all know and love and got him to 9 million in ratings was the dude that would drive a beer truck to the ring. You talk about chaos. That would run into a ring full of 20 dudes and just stunner all of them like he was just running into some kind of college frat bar fight. To me, he is one of those that gives 0 Fs and will run into the middle of chaos and beat the shit out of everybody. You know what? And that's why he's so high on my list. I even questioned myself over and over and over again. Am I really going to put Stone Cold up there above Vader?
Yeah.
Above Stan Hansen?
Yeah.
Yeah. Stone Cold.
I want to argue you, but I can't. It's actually, I mean, you're right in the sense that he really was one of the biggest draws of all times, certainly in terms of ratings. And it was while he was being a brawler. It was while primarily what he was doing was brawling.
And because he was extremely chaotic as well. He interrupted everything. He was disruptive. That's what made him, is that he constantly just
if he came at you with a look on his face, you'd run.
Oh, I'd piss myself.
Right.
Yeah.
So I
probably still today too.
Damn.
He still looks like he did in 2001. He hasn't aged.
Yeah, I want to argue you on this, but I really can't. Yeah. All right. Fair
Jacob
enough.
said, I don't see him as a striker. We're not doing strikers. We're doing it's more
exactly. He's not a
brawlers,
striker.
right?
He's not a striker. He's not a power. He's not a big guy. He couldn't be a technical wrestler anymore because his knees were gone, his neck was toast. But so yeah, he was a brawler. He was absolutely the definition of a brawler at the end there.
And there's only two people that can say that they had
a mud hole in you and beat you up.
Yeah. There's only 2 people that can say they went in and destroyed a grocery store, and that's him and Booker T.
Okay, well that's a whole other. That I say was more comedy wrestling, dude.
Fine.
That's
fair.
Absolutely, that was
not so much
wrestling.
to Booker T. With condolences to Booker T.
Oh my goodness, got milk. So, all right. So number 1, there could be no other. And this is actually why I'm kind of glad I went first.
This is the one we're going to have to agree on.
We're going to have to agree on Bruiser Brody.
Yeah.
Bruiser Brody.
I've got a couple of honorable mentions, but there's no way you can't put Bruiser Brody at 1.
Bruiser Brody has to be the number 1. He's the definition of a brawler. Everything that I described when I described a brawler was, I mean, he created the whole concept behind it. It's pretty much. I mean, I not created, but he defined it. He didn't create it. There's a lot of guys who came before him, but he was the one who mastered it. He was a wild man. He was so in absolute charge of his kayfabe character. Like he hated being outed, breaking kayfabe.
Yeah.
So protective of it. It's a damn crime that he died when he did and the way he did. Go check out Dark Side of the Ring. They have a great episode on it.
Yeah.
It's really scary. It's really freaky, but shows how much of a Wild West wrestling was even until recent times. But there's no way we can't talk about Bruiser Brody when we say the number 1 brawler of all time.
And I'm sorry, we're just going to have to agree to agree that that's the.
But
number 1.
that means we're at a number 9, so we still have to stick someone else somewhere.
So I'll go through a couple more that I had on here. I had
Sure,
Undertaker on here, but he's more based on your definitions, more of a striker than a brawler.
Striker and big man.
He's more strategic and more of a big man as well. So yeah, I get that.
And they said
one.
Kane that was brought up in the chat. I would argue he's a big man, power moves.
Yeah.
More than he doesn't really move. He doesn't run after you, chase after you, and beat you up. He's a power guy. He moves slow. He comes over, whack. He hits you once, you go down.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's not quite a brawler. Not the way that we're defining it. Not the way that I would define it in wrestling.
How about a Harley Race?
Harley Race would fit in there. Yeah, absolutely. But again, a guy who's
just
finishing move was a flying move. So I mean, that's what DQ'd him for me, was that he would leave the mat. He did get technical a few times. So definitely had brawling in his repertoire, but it wasn't like his primary thing. I had Tomohiro Ishii on my list as well, but again, a guy who's got a lot of technical moves.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry, if you're 5'7" or 5'8" or whatever Ishii is, not big, and you can pull off a brawling style where you can leave the ring, beat people up, like you believably are a badass dude. He toe-to-toed Keith Lee. He vertical suplexed Keith Lee in Rev Pro, ladies and gentlemen. If you don't believe in Tomohiro Ishii. But again, lots and lots of suplexes, which is not out of the realm of bruisers or brawlers, but yeah, it just wasn't like that. Just that guy who's going to, like it wasn't. When I think of Bruiser Brody, I'm like, how like Bruiser Brody was it? He's a little more technical. So I DQ'd him as well.
Last one I had on my list here, or 2, frankly, Triple H. I had.
He could. but he was the cerebral assassin.
Yeah.
Part of his whole thing was being cerebral, was having a plan.
More
he could
striker than brawler.
And do a bunch of different styles, could be technical. So I DQ Triple H as well.
Yeah.
But you know who I didn't?
Hmm.
Bradshaw. And I'm talking like in the APA era when he was, but after the new Blackjacks, even when he was JBL, the Southern cowboy hat wearing multimillionaire guy, his style was absolutely brawling.
Yeah.
His finisher was a lariat. That doesn't automatically make you a brawler. Look at the Rainmaker, but his especially like that was the modern version of the Stan Hansen lariat, and he'd get in there and he'd beat you up. So he was on there for me. He was an honorable mention. Kevin Sullivan, Fit Finley, even though he was really technical, he could chain wrestle. That guy, a lot of his matches were brawling matches. The one that I think you could stick in there at number 1, Nick, and I don't think anyone would argue with you if you don't want to have Bruiser at the top. These are the ones. I mean, there's two actually. There's two: Minnesota Wrecking Crew or the Road Warriors.
Road Warriors.
Road Warriors, you could absolutely stick at the top there, and I don't think a lot of people would argue with you.
Both of them.
They weren't going to go in there and put on a clinic, but they were going to go in there and hurt you.
Yep.
Beat the crap out of you. So I also had like Terry Gordy, Dr. Death Steve Williams, Roddy Piper. I actually had on there because for a lot of he was a lot about just punching people in the corner and being chaotic and being crazy.
Yeah.
And here's one, Nick, that I want to get your opinion on: Brock Lesnar. Think about Brock for the last few years. Now, obviously, lots of strikes, lots of submissions. But in terms of a guy who's going to come in and beat someone up and leave, car crash.
But it's
style.
all suplexes and F5 aerial finishers. It's
not
a lot of.
I just had him on my list here.
Yeah.
He wasn't one I was going to mention, but he's on there.
Who else did I have? Anybody else? No, I also had Terry Funk. Just talking in the chat, CZW Moxley.
Moxley. So Moxley's a guy, interesting. I think he's a crossover where he's got a whole submission game. He's got a whole other level of what he can do, but he's got a base in brawling. He does have a lot of brawling in his style.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But that's one thing I want to talk about later on in the show.
Okay.
Is the concept of crossing over.
Yeah. Hybrids.
And hybrids. Exactly. That's what I want to talk about later. This was about pure brawlers. Dudes who that was their bread and butter. And I'm sorry, Bruiser Brody, Cactus Jack, Terry Funk, Stan Hansen, late era Stone Cold Steve Austin, Road Warriors, Sheamus, Vader, Necro Butcher. I'd say most of those guys, you could argue their bread and butter was brawling.
Yeah, I agree with that. Good list.
So there we go.
I'm very happy with that list.
I'm not mad. I'm less mad
hearing
at that
you
list
just
than I
rattle
was
it
at our
off
last
again.
ones.
I was just like,
Yep. Nope. Those all kind of define it.
Yeah.
So we've got brawlers under our belts now, Nick. Let's head over. Let's do comedy wrestlers now. And of course, I think comedy wrestlers are a little bit more easy to define. They're wrestlers who do funny stuff.
Right.
But I think, like with brawlers, there's a lot of guys who can be funny, right? Like Stone Cold Steve Austin, Kurt Angle is probably one of the funniest things I've ever seen. What was the funniest thing you've ever seen in wrestling? The thing you laughed at the most? For me, it was Kumbaya with Kurt Angle and Steve Austin. I was on the ground crying.
Jimmy Crack Corn.
With Kurt with his little hat and Steve Austin with the guitar, and they're both singing, and Deborah and Vince are both like, oh my God. I was crying. But what's the funniest thing you've ever seen?
Oh my
in
God.
wrestling?
I don't know. Off the top of my head, I don't know.
You think about it, because here's the thing. There's a lot of wrestlers who could be funny. Like William Regal was a very funny guy, but I wouldn't call him a comedy wrestler.
No, I agree with that.
You know what I mean? Kane and Daniel Bryan had some great funny stuff.
Yeah.
Neither of those guys are comedy wrestlers. We're talking about guys whose bread and butter was comedy wrestling. It was to make the audience laugh. They were either doing gags, jokes, pratfalls, just stupid, juvenile ridiculousness. Irony's become a big, like, modern one, kind of, meme wrestlers, if you want to call them that. Or it could just be something that's amusing because you get, like, and you could say this is sort of like irony, but it's winking at the crowd, right?
Yep.
Where we're all in on the joke. Yes, we all know pro wrestling is fake. We get it. Now let's tweak it, right? So this sort of subversive idea that we're all in on the same gag, so let's all have fun with it together. And that can also be comedy wrestling. You've got whole wrestling organizations, DDT, Big Kaiju Battle, that are just all about winking at the audience. And they have a whole lot of this kind of comedy stuff. So I don't think, here's the thing, there has not been, I would argue, a lot of comedy wrestlers in the past. Very few wrestlers can make a whole career out of jokes because jokes get old.
Yep.
If you're a one-trick pony, it's gone pretty quickly. So you have to consistently find new things to be funny. But and some have done it. A lot have done it. That's what we're going to do here is try to figure out all the ones that have made us laugh every time they go out and wrestle. However they figure out how to do it, they have to be relentlessly creative. As creative as you do is creating a new match every time with technical holds and, hey, how are we going to sell that this is happening to your arm throughout this whole match? And, oh, let's have this match be about the fact that you slept with my wife, so I'm really mad at you, so I'm going to come out the gates really hot. You have to do a whole match that's going to make the audience laugh and show them something they haven't seen before. That's tough. And it's funny because, Nick, I would argue WWE relies a lot on comedy. Would you agree?
100%.
A lot. And a lot of it doesn't hit.
The Mr. McMahon character himself
is pretty funny.
Was pretty steeped in comedy.
Yeah. Absolutely. He was
a self-deprecating kind of way, right?
Well, he was set up as like an idol meant to be brought down, a piñata in a sense, right? Like the whole idea was it was a caricature of the evil boss and it was meant to be destroyed. And you could argue whether or not that was inherently a comic character.
Mr.
Although
Burns on The Simpsons, something like that.
Yeah, sure. But the thing is, WWE does a lot of comedy because they know that bringing smiles to people, it feels lighter when you leave than something really heavy. Like, New Japan is extremely serious. So it's the most serious organization out there, I would argue. Them and like OG Ring of Honor, very serious about wrestling. But even there, they realize you've got to have a moment to have some fun. And WWE does a little bit more than other places, and to varying degrees of success because their owner has a very particular sense of humor, and he thinks the entire rest of the world shares his sense of humor, and he's wrong. But when they hit, it's great. Fashion Police, we mentioned Kane and Daniel Bryan. There's a whole Regal and Tajiri. There's a whole list of, we can go back, all the funny things that have happened in WWE over the years. They've been funny moments. Who are the characters? Who their character is always funny, right? And it could be people that just did it for like most of their career. I'm not looking at people that were like a gimmick for like Booker T was a comedy character a few times in his career, right? But no one's going to say Booker T was a comic wrestler. Do you know what I'm saying? New Day is they're very funny. They're very entertaining, but I wouldn't call them a comedy wrestling faction.
No.
You know what I'm saying?
I do, and this is making it harder because we're narrowing the field.
Absolutely.
And it's making me even question my picks now.
I have to question mine too. But there's a reason I wanted to bring that up. There's a reason that's going to be part of what we're getting to at the end here.
Yeah.
Is that comedy wrestling, as I argued, is kind of a new thing. It's becoming more and more of a new thing because a lot of the best comedy in wrestling has to do with breaking kayfabe.
Yeah.
And even though, yes, everyone knew wrestling was fake or whatever, or predetermined or whatever you want to call it years and decades ago, everyone knew, but it was like wrestling itself kept kayfabe.
Yeah.
Right. And within wrestling itself, you didn't break kayfabe for the sake of the business. You'd be ruining the business if you broke kayfabe. Until recently, where they kind of went, okay, yes, we know it's kayfabe. So let's do this.
I guess I go first on comedy this time, right?
Yeah, you're first, man. You're doing the comedy wrestling.
Well, you kind of set this one up for me, and I owe you a big thanks for back in 2017 really getting me into this for the first time, like seriously paying attention to it over on the other side of the Pacific Ocean, and helping me understand that there wasn't a lot of comedy in New Japan Wrestling. But I could not include Toru Yano on my list.
The fact that you have him as at number 5 pisses me off.
Be happy he's on the list, first of all.
Why, you son of a bitch.
Listen, the thing
you better have some legit top 4 if you're putting Toru Yano at 5.
I do. Toru Yano for me is special because his entrance alone, every single time, makes me go. Him just coming out, waving DVDs around, taking the turnbuckles off, and hey!
Yeah.
What is it? Whoa!
Yeah.
Just that stuff. Literally every match he's in. And it really pushed it over the edge for me when I got to see New Beginnings back in January with him and Colt Cabana as a tag team alongside Rocky Romero. And just, no, you go. Yeah. And they did this for 5 minutes.
And the thing that pisses me off about you putting him at number 5 is that Toru is a guy who started his career being a very serious wrestler and a scary dude. Like his gimmick was he was a scary dude. But he went comedy and has not looked back. And the brilliance of his gimmick is that he's not the sideshow. They don't treat him as the sideshow. This is a guy who is legitimate, and he has decided to be a cheater and to just be out there for money. And that's literally his style and his gimmick. And it wants to win matches. He's not a goofball and he's not a loser, right?
Right.
He's out there to win. And there's a lot of other guys on this list that don't win matches on the regular because they're treated like jokes by the company they work for. Toru Yano is not treated as a joke. Toru Yano is treated as a guy who decided that he's going to cheat to win. You know, like he doesn't want to get hit in the face.
Yeah.
And that's part of the comedy. But it also means he fits into that world, that very serious world of New Japan, as a fully fledged character. And so what's special about him is he's a comedy character that actually fits in on the level of all of these serious wrestlers. The dude just pinned Okada last weekend. Kazuchika Okada, someone who in every walk of life is considered one of the greatest wrestlers of all time and certainly of the modern era, just got pinned by Toru Yano on a low blow roll-up because that's what Toru Yano does. He's beaten Minoru Suzuki more times than Suzuki's beaten him. Like that's his character is the master thief, and it's hilarious, but he's still legitimate.
Yeah. I
could do a whole show just waxing poetic about how amazing Toru Yano is.
Yeah.
Toru Yano. God damn it. And I still would, I could do it for longer. The guy is absolutely amazing. And the fact he's at number 5 on your list, Nick, makes me want to come through this camera at you.
Well,
like a spider monkey.
Literally, I only have like 3 years of a little bit of history with him. So, I mean, give me that. But okay. He is one of my favorite things to watch in New Japan. Literally one of the main reasons I watch it. I'm so mad I missed Summer Struggle last weekend, but I had the parents in town. But
it's still online.
I couldn't stay up till 5 a.m. to watch New Japan. I'm sorry.
My fair.
But no, he is my favorite thing. What about you, Assyrian Dangerous? Who's your number 5? How are you kicking this off?
Kicking off with this is tough because I'm wondering who you're going to poach for me. But I'm going to start off with Shane Hurricane Helms.
Okay.
Because that was such an original concept in the time he was doing it, where he was playing a delusional guy who thought he was a superhero.
Right.
Or sorry, he was a superhero who everyone thought was delusional. However you want to take it.
Sure.
But between the backstage skits and the fact that, again, like Toru Yano, they allowed him to be something in the ring from time to time. He pinned The Rock, right? That legitimizes the character and it makes it more endeared to the audience. I think I would argue that one of the things that the best comedy characters have is the ability to win matches, the ability to be taken seriously, even for a moment. The audience can take them seriously as being able to win matches, and they're not just there as the clown.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I think that's one thing that takes a comedy character from a certain level to the next level. And there's guys on this list who that's going to come back for, where, you know, like as we always say in the show, funny is money when you can get serious. Right. So whether or not they get serious or whether the gimmick is able to translate into them being taken seriously, that's part of it. And Shane Helms definitely was able to do both of those things.
I agree.
So who's your number 4, sir?
My number 3 and my number 4, again, are sort of on that par, and it's almost like a tie for third. It's hard for me to pick one over the other, but I like them where they're at. Number 4, Kurt Angle. I don't know how much I need to explain this. Kurt Angle is one of those guys, much like you were just describing Toru Yano. is that he's funny. He does all of those funny things that Kurt did in the Attitude Era, not so much later in his career, but those years that he had with Rock and Stone Cold and Mr. McMahon, fantastic. But the minute he steps into the ring...
was one of the people that I thought of, though, Nick. I'm sorry to interrupt, but he's one of the people that I thought of when I thought of people who were funny for a while, but then most of their career they were serious. Because is Kurt Angle funny? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Totally agree with you. One of the funniest guys ever in wrestling. He still comes out of people chanting, "You suck" at him.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah.
But I would argue that the larger percentage of his career, he was a deadly serious, terrifying wrestler.
Yeah, once he switched to TNA, it was a completely different.
Which is most of his career.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I can accept that being your number 4. Because I think he kind of breaks the rules. Do you have another guy you can put in there instead, or do you want to stand fast on that one? I got a whole list here. I could be like,
I do too. I got 2 more that I'm looking at going, do I still like my list if I swap out? Yeah. I'll swap out number 4 for Santino.
Yeah.
Santino Marella.
Yes. Absolutely. He was
I
on my
never
list
enjoyed Santino as much as I did Kurt Angle in his comedy.
Yes.
But I respect the game. I respect everything he did. The Cobra, Santina, all of that stuff. Like
I don't respect
mad
Santina,
respect.
but the Cobra I respect.
Sure.
So, like the Cobra, because the Cobra, like Toriano, won matches. Yeah. Unless it turned on him, in which case, he was done for. But that's part of the point there. He was a guy who in real life is legit badass. But he did and he stuck to that comedy gimmick.
Yeah.
Stuck to it. Absolutely. He's on my list. Santino's a great pick.
Yeah.
Fantastic pick.
How about you? What's your number 4?
My number 4 was actually going to be Santino Marella, but I will go instead. I'll switch this up a little bit, and I'll say Chucky T.
Oh, out of left field.
So the reason I picked Chucky is because he was a guy who was doing comedy wrestling over in Chikara, PWG, when a lot of people weren't doing it.
Yeah.
He was one of the innovators, and some of his stuff with a slow motion grenade, and some of the stuff that you saw coming out of PWG was largely his brainchild. Liger came over and did it because everyone else in PWG was doing it. It was him paying an homage to them.
Gotcha. Okay.
So yeah, no.
So for those that don't know, who is Chucky T? Kyle even asked in the chat.
Chuck Taylor. He's currently in AEW, part of the Best Friends. So he was doing a lot of this stuff. He's been doing it for a decade. Like if you're wondering who that guy is, go back and research. Chucky T is actually one of the OGs of comedy wrestling.
He was champ. Keith Lee took it off him for the PWG Championship, right?
Correct. Yeah. That's right. Yeah, he took it off of Ricochet. So yeah, Ricochet won it for his second time, and then Chucky turned heel and took it off of him. But that was late in his career in PWG. But if you go back, Chucky was being a funny wrestler since day one, and actually some of the stuff that he's doing right now on BTE, where they're trying to kill, what's his name from the Initiative, Brandon Cutler. They're all trying to kill Brandon Cutler. It reminds me a lot of his early stuff in PWG, where he was like him and Kenny Omega were like the mean guys.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like he's been doing comedy for years in wrestling. A lot of it is very much ironic, winking at the camera kind of stuff. But I have to say he's an innovator, so I've got to have him on my list. So Chucky T.
Nice pick, dude. I didn't see that one coming.
Yeah.
Holy smokes.
Got a couple of aces up the old sleeves here. What about you, sir? Who is your number trace?
I'm going to give you a hint.
Chris Jericho?
Jericho.
Okay.
Jericho. I have lost count.
Defend your pick, sir.
Okay. I've lost count of how many funny things that guy has gotten over. I've lost at how many funny things that he either does or says or promos that I laugh hysterically at. I'm not saying that he built his entire career around that. Obviously, the Y2J coming in, first of all, was kind of a snide, snarky brat, and there was some comedy to that in an Attitude Era kind of way. But later, when he came back and he was doing the stuff with Kevin Owens, Festival of Friendship, all of those, The List, It. How many things has that? Now he's doing it all in AEW. He's been doing it for a year now in AEW with Inner Circle and the Brady Bunch stuff, with Orange Cassidy doing that. I don't know if anybody. Well, there are two other people that have made on this list that have made me laugh more than Jericho.
Right.
I understand the confusion there, but I've been watching that man since the mid-'90s come out, make me laugh, and wrestle really good matches. And the Painmaker kind of motif that he did over in New Japan might be the only real exception that
He's
I
had
can
a
think
few.
of.
He's had like
He didn't.
Bon Jovi haircut Jericho, and
Right.
He's had. I see. That's the thing.
The whole
I argue
scarf
Jericho's
thing, and
But that's the thing. Jericho, I argue, is a wrestler who is funny. He's not a comedy wrestler.
That's fair.
And that's kind of what I'm looking for. You know what I
That's
mean?
fair. And
There's a lot of wrestlers that are funny, but like Undisputed Era always makes me. They always crack me up. They're deadly serious. They're playing it deadly. And this might actually be an argument about comedy in general. I was reading an article for preparation for this where they were talking about the movie Airplane, right? The Smuckers brothers in general, right? Kentucky Fried Movie, that sort of thing. And part of the comedy of that is how insanely deadpan it is.
Right.
Everyone in the movie is playing this ridiculousness.
Naked Gun,
as though
all of
Naked
those.
Gun, sure, yeah. And Leslie Nielsen created a whole career out of just complete deadpan delivery. Like he's completely serious about everything he was saying, but the stuff that's coming out of his mouth was absolutely ridiculous.
Nice beaver. Thanks. I just had it stuffed in your hands. Oh, okay.
And the lines, right?
That will
the
never
writing
not
was
be
great.
funny. I don't care
Right.
how old you are. If you could be
They
12
always
or 55.
speak jive. Yeah, exactly. We could quote the whole damn movie,
Right?
And Don't Call Me Shirley. But the point is that like that has a place in comedy, deadpan, like when it's just funny, but you take it seriously.
Right.
Everything's serious, but but I don't know if Jericho crosses that line.
Yeah.
He does on some times. The list of 1,000 moves is one of the classic comedy segments he's ever done. It's just absolutely hilarious. But at the same time, it's absolutely trying to garner real heel heat. So is it comedy or is it really entertaining wrestling? Do you know what I mean?
Kind
and
of.
I think that he straddles that, but I wouldn't under the definition that we're looking for here. I don't know if I'd call him a comedy wrestler.
Is he the same as Santino and Toriano?
Toriano
Absolutely not.
Chucky T, Shane Helms, no, I wouldn't say he is.
Okay,
but he's a really, really funny guy.
He's really funny.
He's really funny.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll allow it just because we got to get moving here, but at the same time,
Give me that exception, please.
I give you that exception. All right,
Because he's
So let's move on.
that good and he's that funny.
Yeah.
You have to admit that.
Unless he's on Twitter. So next up, number three for me is going to have to be also, by the way, my number 2 from the last list, Mick Foley.
Oh.
And you may sit there and go, but Ian, you just said most of his career, blah, blah, blah. Yes. And most of Mick Foley's career, he actually was a comedy wrestler because Mankind became a comedy wrestler. Dude Love, also a comedy wrestler. He did about 10 years as Cactus Jack, but he did 15 years as Dude Love and Mankind, which
I had written down Foley as Mankind specifically as one of my alternates.
As Mankind, from the second that the sock came out.
Yeah.
He became a comedy wrestler. Dude Love is a comedy gimmick. Dude Love was the WWE answer to Toriano, right? He had a move called Sweet Shin Music, where he kicks you in the shin because he can't get his foot up to your neck. That's funny. He came out, and the whole gimmick was that it was him. It was what he, as a child, in his broken, fractured psyche, always wanted to be. Was the dude that the chicks loved that came out there and kicked heavy duty booty, baby. Ow! Right? But it was funny. It drove Stone Cold Steve Austin nuts. They even had like an odd couple pairing where they won the tag team championships. Dude Love was a comedy gimmick. Mankind became a comedy gimmick. And by the way, you had Mankind and The Rock, who I would throw into the category you were talking about with Chris Jericho, as one of the funniest men to ever hold a mic in wrestling. And one of the highest rated segments in wrestling history was The Rock and Mankind Rock This Is Your Life, because it was freaking hilarious. And Mick wrote most of the thing. So if there's comedy in wrestling at all, and you talk about WWE style comedy, Mick Foley has to be included on this list.
One of my favorite Mankind things I didn't hear until he was doing the book tour and he was doing the sit down AMA kind of things or telling stories and stuff. The Mankind mask actually come from a discarded concept for the Undertaker.
Yes. Mason,
the leather
mutilator.
straps and everything like that.
Yeah.
It was a concept that they had done for Undertaker, and he picked it up and go, "Huh, what's that?" and put it on. And Vince walked around and goes, "Yes,
That's my Mason.
yes."
Mason the Mutilator.
Yeah, I completely agree.
shit.
Between Sacco, the high-pitched voice where he do all the crazy talking, and just all of the parts of Mankind specifically, I agree with you on Dude Love as well. But Mankind definitely did it for me.
Yep. For sure.
Yep.
I love that Mick is on both my lists. That's also, I had to throw him on for that. So, sir, you're number 2. We're getting down to it, and then we got to do a little discussion on comedy and brawling because I think there's something there. But go ahead. You're number 2.
But number
What
2 is
your
R-Truth.
Yep. Attaboy. I agree. A guy,
and I am not talking about NWA World Champion
No.
R-Truth. I'm talking about WWE R-Truth for the last 10 plus years.
He's picked up what Santino Marella put down.
Yeah.
If there is a skit that needs to make you laugh, R-Truth. Yeah. And no matter what he does, it's funny. Came out on the kickoff show this last weekend. Was there for 2 minutes nonstop.
Thought it was Payback or thought it was
Raw. That was Raw.
Yeah. Oh, this SummerSlam. Oh, this is Raw.
It's SummerSlam. Well, that explains why you're here, Booker. Yeah. No.
There are times that I first of all loved my Charlotte boy, R-Truth, Ron.
Yeah. That's.
And when they did his Chronicle, they went to Freedom Park, which is a kind of it's basically a pond with a walking path around it and some swing sets. But it doesn't sound like much, but hits close to home because that's the same park I went to play at. I actually got bit by a goose as a 2 or 3 year old there. Mom has pictures of it. It's a good time. Anyway, Ron Killing's multi-talented man. The fact that he's still out there well into his 40s doing the same kind of stuff that got him over in the first place, continues to reinvent the things that he does, from dance breaks with Carmella to really picking up this 24/7 thing and basically being the only thing keeping it relevant at all.
It's a comedy belt.
Yeah.
Him and Tozawa are killing it right now.
Yeah. So absolutely, R-Truth has to be on there.
Could not agree more. He's on my list as well. He was going to be my number 2, which is great because now I get to poach and say my number 2 is Orange Cassidy.
Wow. Okay.
He's that high. And the reason is that I think that, especially given the success that he's had in AEW recently, I've got to put him this high because that is the success of a comedy wrestler. That is true success, where you're able to cross over to the mainstream and everyone gets the joke. And as they pointed out in the chat, and I totally agree, comedy subjective, right? It's everyone has their own thing that they find funny. When everyone finds it funny, the more the people that find it funny, the more successful a comedian you are.
Yeah.
Right. It means that you're tapping into something that's more universal. You're more universal. There's niche comedians all over, and you can have niche comedians who are absolutely legendary, and you can say how great they are. Bill Hicks, I would not say is mainstream, but he's one of the greatest comedians of all time.
Yeah.
Right. As opposed to say like an Eddie Murphy, who is one of the biggest comedians of all time, Chris Rock. Right. So there's definitely a disparity between people that get over big and people that do not. But you can definitively say people that get over big usually pretty funny.
Yeah.
Usually. Yeah. But in the case of Orange Cassidy, here's a gimmick that is so unique, that is so special, and in particular, he has to be so creative with, because it would be so easy to fall into a rut with this gimmick. And he hasn't, and he's kept it creative and new, and part of that is the fact that he can go. When he needs to, he could turn on the jets. So I had to put Orange Cassidy on here because of what he means for modern comedy and wrestling, and I think that he's a harbinger of a lot of things to come.
Yeah.
So
and
for
they're
me,
getting fans
OC.
back now. It's going to be interesting to see the effect that has on Dynamite and him being up there with Jericho doing those things that he does. I mean,
yeah. Oh, wait, like we were saying earlier, comedy, part of it is the audience. It's a major part of it. And if you have a stand-up comedian playing to an empty room, they're not going to seem as funny as if a crowd is just dying laughing after getting their 2 free drinks. Right? Like Chris Rock could tell the funniest joke in the world, but if it's just crickets afterwards, you're like, was it that funny? Orange Cassidy needs an audience. I can't believe they did all this whole run with him without an audience. So I'm looking forward to seeing if people still get the joke once the audience returns.
I agree wholeheartedly with you. I don't know if I would have put him at number 2.
Well, We'll discuss why later.
Sure.
But number one, what is your number one, sir?
This one you're going to hate me for. This one you're going to disagree with.
Because I think you're going to
argue
steal
with.
it from me. I think you're going to steal it from me.
The Rock.
Oh, you didn't steal it from me. In fact, you betrayed one of your boys and went for The Rock because you did. Okay, The Rock. All right. Same thing as Chris Jericho. He's just a funny guy.
He's not just a funny guy. I don't know anybody that has had more catchphrases, more crowd interaction, more laughs from tearing down Michael Cole, Hurricane himself, Goldust and the interactions there, up to Rock and Sock Connection with Mick Foley and all of their interactions. I've never laughed harder than or enjoyed myself watching wrestling, had fun watching wrestling than when The Rock would come out with a microphone.
See, but this is the thing that I'm saying as a definition of a comedy wrestler versus a funny guy.
I understand.
Because my number one is your boy Colt Cabana.
What?
Who's made a whole career, his whole career.
I mean, he's on
was
my
being
list.
a comedy wrestler. He's the definition of a guy who made a whole career off of being a comedy wrestler. Literally what he is a funny wrestler. That's all he is. The Rock is a guy who is funny, who is a wrestler. Colt Cabana is a comedy wrestler. And I think that's really the divide that we're talking about here is the difference between someone who is, their gimmick is that they're a comedy wrestler and they're going to come out and be funny, as opposed to The Rock, who says something funny and then goes out and wrestles a straight up match.
I agree with you. I think you're splitting hairs.
But
it's and I think we're going to talk about this a little bit to wrap it up.
Let's do it right now. Let's do it right now because the splitting of the hairs is kind of the point that I'm getting to here.
Yeah.
With all of this.
Well, it's what we were saying in the beginning. You get into hybrid scenarios, right?
Hybrids, exactly. And part of wrestling is being entertaining. Since the beginning of wrestling, one of the things you wanted to be was someone who was entertaining, who could talk butts into seats, right? You wanted to be someone on the mic who could be entertaining. And part of entertainment is being funny. And you go back and look at a lot of these things that people say, dude, when you have people that looked at wrestling and saw, man, he just talked somebody in the seats because he was saying some wild stuff. Muhammad Ali took that and ran with it. And then The Rock is basically took Muhammad Ali and was like, I'm going to bring it back to wrestling. Gorgeous George took it from Gorgeous George. But Muhammad Ali said some stuff that was really funny. He was making fun of his opponents. The stuff that he was saying about some of the guys he fought was hilarious.
Absolutely.
Hilarious. But at the same time, he's going to go out there and kick their ass. He wasn't going to go out there and make the audience laugh in the middle of the match. And that's the difference. You can be entertaining. You can be funny. But are you still going to make the audience laugh in the middle of the match? Is that who you are as a gimmick? Do you know what I mean? And The Rock had moments of that in the ring, but that wasn't who he was. That's not who Jericho is when he gets in the ring, except for some matches. You know, like I'm sure the match with Orange Cassidy is going to be ridiculous. I'm sure the Stadium Stampede was ridiculous. Like, he'll have funny matches and he'll have funny aspects, but he's still going to go out there and be a serious wrestler, right? Whereas Colt Cabana is going to get in the ring and him and Toriano are going to be arguing about whose turn it is to be in on the tag team, and it's going to be freaking hilarious. We're going to laugh our asses off. Right. Santino Marella is going to have that stupid little, the Cobra, and make us all laugh with all of his antics with it. Like, it's about people that get in the ring and they're still funny. You know what I mean? Dude Love's going to get in there and still be funny. He's going to work a match, but he's still going to be funny the entire time. We're there to laugh at him and with him.
Yeah.
And so that's really, I think, one thing I wanted to bring up is that everyone these days, like, there's no all the brawlers we picked, who's still wrestling out of all of those? Necro Butcher's retired, Mick's retired, Bruiser Brody's dead, Terry Funk is retired, or he should be. Bruiser's dead, Vader's dead, Stan Hansen, Stone Cold, Road Warriors, they're all done. Sheamus is the only one, and that was the one we argued the most.
Yeah.
Right? Is Sheamus still a brawler? Because brawling has kind of gone away as a fundamental style. You can't be a pure brawler anymore because the audience expects more entertainment than just people throwing big haymakers and coming out in the crowd. They've seen that. They want more. And so you have all these hybrids. Kevin Owens is a hybrid.
Well, it's also
John
transitioned up to the big guys. If if you're going to have a brawler, it's mostly big guys now. So
it's become more big guys, but that classic brawling style. When you think of Bruiser Brody going out and people are genuinely terrified of him getting close to them. Yeah. The stands are clearing. Dick the Bruiser creating a riot, right? Because his match goes out of hand at the end and they keep fighting and he keeps, He goes out in the crowd and the fans get involved. Next thing you know, you have 13,000 people in a riot, and he gets banned from New York's athletic commission for life. That's a bruiser. That's a brawler, right? That doesn't happen anymore. You don't have those guys. Between the safety protocols and also, I would argue, between how people perceive wrestling. They're not going to be scared about someone coming out and bumping next to them. You know what I mean? Like a wrestler comes out of the crowd and bumps you now. You and I were at Lucha Underground. Pentagon threw, I think it wasn't Cage, was it? He threw somebody into the chair. Like we had to get up from our chairs and move in a classic brawler spot. They brawled to the crowd. He tossed a guy into the chairs that we were sitting on. It was great. Were we actually scared they were going to hurt us? No. We wanted to get out of the way for the sake of the show. And that's the difference, is we all know it's a show now. And that's why comedy wasn't a thing 40 years ago and brawling was. So you had all these pure brawlers 40 years ago. No comedians. Almost no comedians. None to talk about. But now there's comedians all over the place. A lot of wrestling is funny. You've got guys like Jericho. You got guys like The Rock who are coming out there and people are putting them on lists as being comedy wrestlers because what they're doing mostly is being funny.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You could argue that the Young Bucks matches, they're supposed to be taken seriously, but they're a lot of fun to watch. There's a lot of talking to the crowd in the middle of it. There's a lot of like, we're all kind of, we're all winking at each other. We all are in the know about what's really happening. It's a Meltzer driver. Ha ha ha. Ironic, right? There's a lot of that winking aspect to wrestling today. So there's like a crossover where brawling is going away and comedy is coming in. And so that's why, like, if you look at our comedy list we've got here, Shane Helms, Chucky T, Mankind, Orange Cassidy, Colt Cabana, Toriano, Santino Marella, Chris Jericho, R-Truth, and The Rock. The only people who are working more than 20 years ago are ones that I would debate, like Rock, Jericho, and Mankind. Everybody else, anyone who's a pure, Shane Helms, but anyone who's a pure comedy wrestler, they're right now. Yeah. On my list, I also had Kikutaro or Ebe-san. I had Ryusuke Taguchi, his current run. I had Norman Smiley. I had Grotto. I had El Generico. I had the Bushwhackers, who are a little bit more of a throwback, but I would argue they were a comedy team.
As long as you didn't have Eugene on your list.
I didn't have Eugene. They tried to make him a comedy thing, and I had Gentleman Jervis Cottonbelly, and I also had Joey Ryan, who's an interesting one to talk about too. I didn't put him on my list because he's controversial right now, and I just didn't want to get into that with anybody. But he's a guy who absolutely made an enormous career off of ironic comedy wrestling.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, if he wasn't controversial, he could absolutely arguably be on this list. But most of those, with a few exceptions, are modern. Yeah. They're now. They're happening now. When everyone wants to smile more at wrestling, when, like big kaiju battle, DDT, that's happening now. So I'm wondering, Nick, do you feel like brawling as a style is becoming absorbed into regular wrestlers, like they're having that be part of their arsenal, because the actual idea of being a pure brawling wrestler is no longer something that's viable? And it's more viable these days to be a comedy wrestler, despite the fact that some would argue it's destroying wrestling.
I think we're seeing people that could be considered brawlers in an early part of their career become more strikers and more along the lines of Taker and Triple H. Like, that's how I think about Kevin Owens. He's this hybrid striker.
He's a full hybrid. Oh, he's a full hybrid.
But he's still funny, right? He's got his funny moments. He's quick. He makes good. He's snappy, right? Good on the mic. But he can also whip your ass, and he'll also do some high spots as well, right? He ain't scared. He does all of it, right?
He does everything.
I see the pure brawling moving into the big guy territory. I see a Braun Strowman. I see Big Show with his knockout punch, and the cowering that people do when those guys come towards them or get into the ring with them. So that's what I think of, that the brawler that we know that we were making our picks on outside of Sheamus for obvious recency stuff. I think that has moved into the big guys. The comedy stuff I completely agree with you on, in that the some of the best stuff is being done right now.
Absolutely.
In the last decade, I would say.
Yeah, not even the big guys. I would say that it's part of the arsenal for a lot of guys who want to come across as tough. But let's also call a spade a spade. There's less pure tough guys in wrestling now than there's ever been.
Sure.
And by the way, that's a hot take right there.
Sure.
But I'll stand by it. I would take if you took the roster of WWE when it was WWF in 1985 and had a bar brawl with the current roster and just make it even. So it's 20 guys and 20 guys, right? And you had them have a bar fight. Dude, 1985 would wipe the floor with now.
I'll put the 2000 roster in there as well. Versus,
Absolutely.
As a triple threat if we want to. And it'd be a fun exhibition to see, just to have them stand next to each other. And let's just see like the top 10 of the roster from 85, 2000, and 2020. Holy smokes. I should almost make a fun infographic out of that.
We could book it. Take 20 wrestlers from 85, 20 wrestlers from now, and put them on a big open field. Who survives? Haku, that's it.
Right.
That's the answer, by the way. But that's kind of my point, is that when you look at these two styles of wrestling, and they are very specific styles, and part of the thing I was trying to do with this was really define when they're a specific style, they're very specific. And there are people that exemplify those specific styles. When you are really, really locked in on that style, those two styles, one is going away and one is coming to prominence. And I think that says something about wrestling. I think it says something about how it's being perceived, how like the things that people want out of their wrestling. And that's one thing that I want to say to like the old school heads, like the Jim Cornettes of the world, right? Like when you look at what is working, what is getting over now, what is drawing money. Brawlers used to draw money. Pure brawlers now don't draw money.
No.
And that's why so many people are moving away from that. Comedy is drawing more money. And that says something about it.
The athleticism
and high
of flyers, the circus
Absolutely.
aspects of flyers, right?
Sure. And people who are crossovers who can do a little bit of everything and make a faster paced match. People aren't scared by a wrestler coming at them in the crowd anymore because kayfabe has gone away, because the business has been exposed. And that's okay, because comedy never existed before. And yes, comedy's subjective. Yes, not everything's going to get over. Some people hated Fashion Files. Some people loved it. Some people can't stand Orange Cassidy. Some people think he's hilarious. That's fine. Not everyone thinks that Eddie Murphy was funny, right? Not everyone thinks Larry the Cable Guy is funny. It's whatever your thing is, it's fine. As a wrestler, your whole purpose is to get over, right? And if you can get over with comedy, you can find that niche, great. But it's just more easy to do that now than it ever has been, because of that tacit agreement between the audience and the wrestler that, yes, we both understand what's going on here. Let's have some fun with it. So that's kind of what I thought was funny about this. Let's look at what our tops were. And sure enough, as we listed them off, by and large, our top brawlers from 20, 30 years ago, our top comedy guys from right now. It says a lot about wrestling, and that's kind of what I want to do with the show, Nick. And thank you, everyone, for coming along on that little journey with us.
Yeah, no kidding. And looking back at, I'm looking at, Kurt Angle in his comedy years, Santino, Foley is Mankind, but Colt, Toriano, Jericho, R-Truth, and Rock, of course. Colt, Toriano, Jericho,
by and large,
R-Truth,
they're right now
still here.
And again,
arguably doing their best work right now.
Lot of my honorable mentions. My honorable mentions for brawlers from a long time ago. Only a few from right now.
I had one.
Wrestlers comedies right now. So everyone, I hope you enjoyed that show. I hope you enjoyed our little journey into that specific niche of wrestling. Hope you enjoyed and hope you agreed with us, or if you didn't agree with us, that's cool too. Head over to the Facebook discussion group. Let us know what you thought, if we're completely out of line, if we're insane, or if you think we hit the nail on the head. Thank you guys for tuning in to us and listening to us. As always, you guys are phenomenal.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for being patrons. Thank you for giving us your hard-earned dollars every single month. And for your support of this show. We really appreciate it. If you guys would like to, I don't need to drop all of that stuff because you guys are patrons. For those of you that might be watching live that aren't, congratulations. You snuck in the back door of a bonus episode. So enjoy. Yeah! Go sign up for the $10 tier because you've got 2 years of back catalog of bonus episodes that you can get access to. Coming up, just to give you a teaser, because of events that are coming up, we're looking at the next 2 months revolving around the G1. We're kicking things off here with the G1 on the 19th of September, so we're going to do a preview for the September episode, and then we're going to do October as a recap of the outcome of the G1 and how we get to Wrestle Kingdom in 2 months from a G1.
If you hear that and you're like, oh, God, New Japan, just keep in mind, we are a show that does proselytize New Japan a lot. I'm just going to throw that out there right now, and it will be fun. The whole idea is to get people who are not currently into New Japan with those episodes. We did it. We had a
shaking.
big,
I need my bracketology.
Because this is the funny thing. Actually, a little history of the show. Nick did not watch New Japan when we started. He had no idea. And actually the G1 and us doing the G1 on the show is what got him into it. So it's become kind of a thing for us on the show is let's reach out to people who might not have watched New Japan and help them get into it, because the best time to do it is the G1.
Yep.
So if you are listening to this and you're like, I don't listen about the G1, well, just check it out, because it is going to be very much a primer on New Japan as well as leading into the G1. So the whole idea is to make you ready to watch the G1 so you won't feel like a fish out of water, and you'll actually enjoy it a lot because it's some good stuff.
Yeah, good stuff. Just want to give you guys a heads up what you got looking forward to the next 2 months for bonus content here. But thank you guys for tuning in. Love you guys. Thank you for all of your support. And as always, my name is Nick Howell. You can find me on Twitter at DataCenterDude.
And I am Sir Ian Dangerous. You can find me on Twitter at Sir Ian Dangerous.
But by God!
Would somebody stop the damn match?
This show is part of the Orbital Jigsaw Network. For more episodes, subscribe to us on iTunes, Google Play, or Stitcher Radio. For details and show notes from each episode, check us out, orbitaljigsaw.com.